Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the Love and Thunder podcast. We are back with my great friend, Dr. Vassily, my I don't know, mentor, my go-to person, one of my favorite doctor on the planet and person. So stoked to have you back here.
Thanks, Camille. The feelings are mutual. Really great for you. Yeah.
We are love.
Yeah.
So great. So okay, Dr. Voss, I have every time I work with my girls, I always have you in the back of my head because I'll go through things with them and I'm like, okay, what would he think of that? And I've had a lot of different things that has come up recently, and I kind of want to go a little bit deeper with you because I kind of feel like right now we are in a space where we're like the trends that are happening out there are kind of falling out of, especially one specific thing is kind of that fasting for women. I feel like 2-3 years ago it was this new thing, this is going to fix you, and I fell on that bandwagon because I'm always going to try things because I feel like we are labs for our bodies, so it's kind of important as we try to heal to find those things. And I've been pulled, like I don't fast anymore at all. And most of my women don't fast anymore. And I really use it as almost like a context and medication if needed. But I've just noticed, at least for myself, like the pairing with the cortisol and hormonal shift hasn't seemed to be really meeting the expectation, if that makes sense. So I would love for us to kind of go over that together. What are your thoughts? What have you seen?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you. I mean, I'm honored that that you think of me that way, and so I'm just reiterate how grateful I am. And it's interesting because for me, I'm continually sort of learning, and so I guess I don't see myself as some like authoritative, like I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't think and I don't feel that way. So I mean, I feel amazed that somebody might think of me that way. So thank you.
Well, me and Dave always say, and by the way, this is you answering like that's definitely why I think about you this way. Because me and Dave, we always talk that you want to go to a person that doesn't talk in absolute, because there's always, a little bit more here and there, and we don't know much.
And that's a great point, because in medicine, I'm traditionally trained. I come from that world, and there's this sense or feeling that we, as physicians, as a medical community, need to have an answer, and that we're supposed to know. And one of the common things that I say when I talk about medicine in general and my philosophy and my practice is that the longer I practice medicine, the less dogmatic I get. Because and some of the greatest moments in my medical career that I sort of remember, and I don't know if pride's the right word, but that I feel really fulfilled in what I was doing as a physician for people. It wasn't the data that drove those decisions. It was the feeling in the moment. I mean, down to, like one, my wife, a lot of people ask me for stories because I worked in the ER for a long time, and I forget most of them. My wife will have to say, oh, well, tell them the one about that. But the ones that I remember, the ones that I probably remember and carry with me for the rest of my life, are ones where it wasn't, I was following what the state of the art randomized controlled trial data tells us we should do. It was this moment, it was like, the ship's sinking. Nobody really knows where to go, me included, but this just feels like the right choice to make.
Yeah.
And then, like
Yeah.
Things happen in ways that, you know, even have residents who are like, man, you were such a cowboy. Like, that was amazing. Like, how did you do that? It's just like, and it's not like there was a lot of that, but there are definitely moments where that happened, and it's not some data on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It's opening yourself to feeling the energy and the consciousness and what's right. And that doesn't always necessarily make sense to our logical trained minds. So the longer I practice, the less dogmatic I get. And really, to get back to your question, fasting in women, I think intermittent fasting, the data has been out for a while that has helped us to see that long-term regular time restricted eating is actually not really good.
Yeah.
And that's been around for a while. Walter Longo has done that research. And so, I moved from a point where, okay, you got to go with your feelings to a point of like data. And, I guess I'm somebody where I'm like, I feel like you need to pay attention to both, right? It's not, you shouldn't just be acting on feeling. I think the best way to do it is, to make an assessment as best you can, bring all the decision points together and find what the right path forward is. And when I'm working with a client or a patient, I might think one direction is the right way to go, and they might feel the other direction is the right way to go. And I will 100% back what they feel the right way to go is. 100%, because that's the right way to go.
It's their body.
And
yes.
So even if it doesn't really make sense to me from like the data standpoint, I'm, and here's the other thing is, we're continually changing course. So we make this decision today, we see how that plays out, and then we have more information, and then we can reassess and iterate. So make that transition back to your original question, fasting in women. Depends what, fasting can mean many different things to many different people. I started with intermittent fasting because I think that's where a lot of people's minds go, is they immediately start thinking intermittent fasting, which is really, the right term is time restricted eating, because you're really restricting your eating to a certain window of time in the day. And doing that over the long term and on a regular basis is not really ideal for our physiology, and that data now exists to make that point. What seems to be more effective from a data standpoint is utilizing fasting in a more tactical or strategic way, in the form of a more intense but shorter fast, in the form of a fasting mimicking diet, which is anywhere from a 3-day to a 5-day or 7-day. There's different sort of protocols that have been looked at and validated scientifically for different reasons. And this gets to your point that there is a benefit for triggering autophagy. And autophagy is that process where we self-consume. And I'll digress from the question and answer for a second to do a little bit of background physiology. If you look at human beings, animals in general, we're geared, designed, evolved, however we got here. Our bodies absorb everything they possibly can from what's available. We consume it, it wants to absorb it all. Why is that? The reason, we believe, is because ultimately the body is preparing for the inevitable fast. That if you look historically through our history, a cycle of feast and famine, or summer and spring and then winter and fall, was part of what we are as humans, as beings on this planet. We've fortunately gotten to a place in our Western societies where most of us don't have to go through that cycle anymore. But what it's doing, it's disrupting a natural cycle that is actually very important to our physiology, because we hoard every calorie and every nutrient and everything that we can including the cells. So we have cells that we accumulate. We accumulate inflammation damage and, toxic damage from everything from the sun and things that we're exposed to in our food and the air we breathe and the water. And that damages those cells, and those cells become what we call senescent, or, popular term are now these zombie cells. And they're not necessarily frank diseased cells, but they're the pool of cells that are not metabolically healthy. They're, I sort of give a talk where I grade, we have trillions of cells in our body, it's 3 or 12, probably a little different for everybody. But all those cells are not equal, right? Like some of them are A players, B, C, D, all the way down to F players, meaning like A players metabolically functioning really smoothly. They're doing everything very efficiently. They secrete proteins that help bring cells around them up. C players are sort of, they're not quite as efficient as the A players, but they're functioning well enough. And their secretome, like proteins that they secrete to communicate to the cells around them, don't bring the cells up or down. They're sort of average. And then you get down into the D and the F players, where they're actually malfunctioning. They're metabolic, not working right. They create a drag. And we can use the analogy of, like, you can think about people in the workplace, right? Like there's some people, they walk in their room, you're like, oh my goodness, thank goodness they're here, right? We all work better when we're with those people. And then there's some people, it's like, oh my goodness, like, that they bring the attitude that's brought, it's like, it's going to be a struggle. And so our cells are no different. The only reason we hang on to the D and the F player cells, like we hang on to them as long as we can, too long, because those cells end up creating disease, autoimmunity, cancer, plaque formation, inflammation. They serve as sort of the fuel for the accelerated inflammation that comes with aging. The only reason we hang on to them, based on our current scientific understanding, is to cannibalize those cells when we're starving. That's it. And maybe there's other, again, like, let's not be dogmatic. Maybe there's other benefits to those cells, but at least in my sort of lay interpretation of the current science, as I understand it, is that the only function that those cells really have is food for the A, B, and C player cells when there's nothing coming in. So fasting, that starvation cycle, is something that's important for us, and not just that, all the way down the phylogeny. Like, so doing it once or twice a year in a targeted fashion when your body's ready can absolutely be something that's useful for your health, because the elimination of those cells, the data would indicate, really potentially the cure for diseases of modern society could be fasting when done appropriately.
Yes. Yes, that was kind of.
I'll say one more thing. Sorry, Camille.
Yeah, no, you're good. It
starts to get more complicated for women, mainly because of sort of what we were talking about, I think, before we turn on the recording, but also biologically. Women have a hormonal cycle that's very different from men's.
Yeah.
And there are periods in that cycle, there are times in that cycle when you're in a robust, regenerative, anabolic state, or more anabolic state, and there are times when in that cycle when you're not. And so, adding, which is stressful. Women know this better than me, right? So like when you're going through the later stages in the cycle, it's usually not the best time to do it fast.
Yeah, your whole metabolism ramp up before you get your period. So to me, it doesn't make sense to do it there. Normally, I wait until you kind of get your period. Everything is like already kind of resetting, and and then it ramps back up as
and you're getting more robust. Your healing capacity regenerative capacity is better. Your women are better able to weather that stressful period of a fast, right? If you're doing a 3, 4, 5 day fast, but in short, fasting, when done properly in a targeted strategic way, is an important part of a health or longevity plan. And it's not something that we should be doing. We shouldn't be trying to trigger ketosis on a daily basis. And Walter Longo has done this research comparing, you could do 3-day fasting mimicking diets in the year and get more biologic benefit than time restricting your eating year round. And in fact, time restricting your eating year round creates, increased stress on the system, which seems to be potentially detrimental for long-term health. And so I think, that's the answer to the question that you brought up, which is, if it's timed right, it's done the right way for the right reason, fasting can absolutely be beneficial. And then I think, something that I feel like I should bring up is that, I know men and women, so I don't want to pigeonhole that only women suffer from this, but like eating disorders are a real thing.
Yeah.
And in our society are, a problem. And in my view, I've had this thought in the back of my mind sometimes when I speak to clients around, what are we, is this the right thing for this person at the right time based on where they are, emotionally, spiritually, right? You have to evaluate each of those things to know that it's right. And so, I don't, other than just acknowledge that's something to consider. I think this, the intermittent fasting might actually fuel some of the potentially negative components of that sort of, process that we deal with in our society. Makes
so
sense.
part of why I wanted to talk about this, because I work with women, right? Thousands of them at a time, like, yearly. And I really wanted to go into that subject because that component of eating disorder and suffering in silence, I have seen very much link with the fasting. There is, I think as women age and things are changing, they find themselves in a very hard position, and they find themselves with metabolic, dysregulation. And what I see a lot of them doing is because it is fed so hard in their brain and everywhere, like, well, calorie deficit, without looking at fixing the metabolism. Then they go, okay, well, they say fasting is good, and they just hang on to it. So what I see them do is they'll train in the morning completely fasted, like not with protein, not with anything like that, right? They'll train completely fasted, and then when they get hungry, they'll go for a coffee. And then when they get jittery, which is kind of wild, right? Because you're like, my body is literally like shaking because it is so depleted. And then they'll go, well, I should eat something. And then it's like their kids, they're making mac and cheese as a snack for their kids or whatever. And they take one bite and then the wheels come off. And then it's like, now like they just spiral on that shame and guilt. Like I lost control. Like a lot of it is I've seen is control. Right. I've lost control. Now I'm not good enough now. And then now we just spiral down. Well, tomorrow will be better. And I really noticed that, right? I really noticed like when they do good in their head, they'll get 3 days of that. And now when you look at that, you're like, my God, it's like you're driving your cortisol up all day. You're not fueling your day. And then, at night, your body it goes nuts. And now you eat dense food and your body's storing everything because that's the state you're in. And then tomorrow it's just, you're starting the day in like a little bit of a worse state than the previous day. And then that piles up for years and years. And then we get somewhere where it's just really hard to be. And that's what I've seen. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that's just literally like the recurring habits that I see with women. And I found myself there after I had Zoe, because that was 5 years ago when the intermittent fasting was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it worked for a little bit. And then I found myself at a point that I would be eating 1,500 calories and I was like, my weight's kind of not moving. I feel puffy. I can feel my joint. I was like, wait a second, something's off.
Yeah.
And now I'm like super muscular and lean and I'm eating like 2,400 calorie a day. And I don't miss a breakfast ever.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there's
No, two things came up for me when you were talking about that. One is women aren't getting help from the medical community because maybe what what a lot of women feel, particularly in middle age, is hormonal shift.
Yeah.
And I guess originally when we had talked about doing this one, you mentioned hormones were a topic, but that you'd like to cover at some point. I don't know if that's now, but I'll bring it up because the medical community has basically been scared
Yes.
by a misinterpretation of data that occurred decades ago that has since been like retracted in the medical journals. And ultimately that fear and that data that was misinterpreted, basically that, appropriate hormone therapy in women in perimenopause and menopause was dangerous for them, is not true. It's actually the opposite is true. And we now have, a whole country of physicians who don't know how to properly support women's hormones.
Yes, I agree.
And therefore, how can you have a healthy metabolism?
Yeah.
Suddenly popping people on and off the pill. Now I don't want to demonize the pill because when used appropriately, it can be a useful tool, just like any other. But now the only thing that most doctors are comfortable, the only kind of hormone therapy that doctors are comfortable prescribing, that most traditionally trained doctors are comfortable prescribing, is the pill. And it's not it's like taking a sledgehammer to something where you want to bring these fine, think like jewelers, you know what I mean? You want precision, fine tuning, refinement, remeasurement. You want sort of a different kind of medical approach, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For optimal outcomes.
Especially for women, because what I'm seeing, for me, when I obviously work in the nutrition and fitness, but I really see that like the older you get for women, like the tighter, that wiggle room get. And it is like women are a lot more precise than men, because I think men, because of your amount of muscle and your amount of hormones, like you can come in a little rougher. But for women, if you miss the mark, you miss.
Yeah.
And I do want to talk about hormones, by the way, because I have, I just work with a lot of women, and then I always ask them what they do, right? And I get horror story, like so many horror stories, so many, hysterectomy without follow up of like a hormonal state before or after, and then it's like that poor girl, she's left there, and sometimes they remove the ovaries, sometimes they don't, and they don't even explain to them what's going to happen, or like the symptoms, or anything like that. And I get girls that they'll get their hormones checked out, and then doctor prescribe X, Y, or Z, and I'm like, well, I'll tell them, can you ask this to your doctor? And then they'll get answer like, well, why would you want to know this? And I just try to direct them so they can gain as much information so they can do the right thing. But I would love to talk to you about that, like whether it's like if someone prescribed progesterone, maybe like what is most common. Same thing with testosterone and estrogen. Would you rather do like injection or cream or pill, etc.? I'm happy to go as deep or not in it, like.
No, I mean, happy to. I guess before we go there, there were two things that came up for me when I heard you talking. And so one was women aren't getting, I think, the best advice a lot of the time.
Yeah.
and particularly around, and I say hormones, but it's, nutrient supplementation, it's general biological support for women, good, genuine, authentic advice that's valid is hard to come by. And so they're hitting a wall there. I believe many women are. And then the other thing is sort of what we were talking about, spiritually, emotionally, that, I guess some people, even I'm scared, I don't want to say scared, but I'm hesitant to say it, but this idea that, that women and men have sort of generally different, again, this is not absolute, and there are shades to this, but the way, men and women have sort of different philosophical, spiritual, energetic roles that they potentially fill. And this is not binary in any stretch. And I would agree, the biology would agree that it's not binary. So I don't want to turn people off by that. But I think recognizing that there's a subtleness, a nurturing, a different sort of way of viewing themselves and their roles in families and in societies, that this sort of control component, particularly, with the way many sort of Western societies are sort of, male dominated in certain ways, this control issue, and then around eating is a real one. And so women aren't getting help there because of a lot of the structure that's in place that I feel doesn't necessarily empower. What I have heard from many women is they feel is really their emotional or spiritual sort of need. And so the best story I'll use my mom. And my mom and dad were in the entertainment industry. My dad was an actor, my mom was an actress. And my mom grew up in sort of the women's lib, in the 60s, and, equal rights for women, and women have a place in the workplace. And what happened, and the way she described it to me was, she was as successful, if not more successful than my father in his career. And actually, I think at the time was from a wage earning perspective, earning more than my father. And then they just, they wanted to have children. They had my sister who's older than me and then me. And I remember my mom for a period of time went back to work. And many years later, she sort of told me that, I was back at work feeling like, this is the empower, I'm living the fulfillment of the women's movement. And she said, all I really wanted to do was be back with you, sister.
Yeah.
And which is what she ultimately did. But I think, and she never said this to me, but, I intuited, that maybe there was felt like a little bit, I don't want to say failure, but like I'm letting this movement that I believe in down. Yeah. Perhaps by doing what she did. And, like what I would say is, I'm, eternally grateful to my mother for making that choice, even though I was very young and didn't really understand it, understood what she was giving up. And then I know that still she potentially feels, although she's never articulated it quite clearly to me this way, but again, I'm intuiting. So Mom, if you're listening to this and I'm getting it wrong, I'm sorry. But that, maybe a little bit of guilt for, okay, being mom, and nurturing my sister and myself. And I I'll tell you, as we want to talk about men and whatever these roles, like young boys need the nurturing so bad. Like I desperately needed it. And looking back, and I feel that is part of what, because a lot of people look at me, like I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I've won 2 like world champion state. I love that stuff. It's how I get my physical, activity, and how I express some of my potentially repressed emotions, so
Mhm.
whatever we repress needs to be expressed, right? And so that physicality allowed me a socially acceptable outlet for that. And so people look at me like, you're a doctor, you're this muscular guy, you're 6 foot, you combat sports. And it's like, people who know me, like, I'm a big teddy bear, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not, that's sort of an outward persona. Like, as a little boy, I so needed that nurturing.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would be without it. Like, thank goodness for that. And
Yeah.
the thought that a woman can't fully live into that with true like pride and a sense that they're upholding what it is to be like a woman in society and
Yeah.
upholding the rights of women. I don't know if I'm articulating this properly.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
there's a potential issue there, and then when you get into control and then looping back to the fasting, like I don't know, I think some acknowledgement around the nurturing side of women and how to best support them in that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like, I think on that side for women, there's a lot of pass down, like a lot of culturally generational pass down. Your story with your mom is funny because I just saw my mom recently and we talked a little bit. Well, I forced her because I'm here to heal. So I wanted to bring her with that. And we talked a little bit about her work because she was full-time working and she had 4 kids. And she literally gave me a little comment about, back then I thought I did what I was supposed to do. And I could just feel a lot of regret of, it was either work full time or be with the kids. And I just felt her longing when she said that. And I felt that too growing up, I have a chemical engineering degree, was the fittest on earth. And I just want to be a mom. And then it was like, okay, well, now I'm a business owner and I'm this like ultra boss babe. And with my daughter was like I just could feel my heart rip every time I would drop her to work, and I would be like why am I doing this? And yeah, and then she stayed home with me, and now she goes to this school that is as nurturing as I am. And
Yeah.
she's there a couple hours, no more. But no, I'm totally with you. And I know people are gonna hate hearing this because they're, when you're a boss babe and not in the recovering process, it's hard to see. It's hard to see, but I think that for a woman, like the way sometimes I see is, by the way, you can have it all also, like as a side thing, you can have it all. It's just that you can't just push and push and push and push. And that's kind of what I see happening with women, right? It's like they just try to drive and drive and drive and drive. And it's like, like we need the softness, we need the relaxing, we need that time in the month, because you can track your hormones and you'll feel the time of the month where you're in a rest period, and it's not don't work, but here be gentle,
Yeah.
be gentle and loving, because if you're gentle and loving, when the hormones come back up, you're gonna do miracle, like you're gonna be a powerhouse. But I yes, I
love it.
totally. This is so like there's so much intangible here,
Yeah. So yeah.
but it
Sorry
also makes
if I'm
sense.
bringing us to a place, but and then I'll say I'll speak for myself. Men need it too in our own way,
Yeah.
and I think in this where men and women I think suffer similarly from this sort of, maybe it's a misinterpretation, a misapplication, I don't know what it is, exactly how to phrase it or put my finger on it. Men follow a similar sort of need necessity that way. It just manifests in a different way.
Yeah.
But I think for women, I think they're sort of, I feel like the interface might be harsher for them. I don't know if that makes sense, and how it's confronted in society, this expectation, both personal and professional, and then with sort of the energetic side of things.
Yeah.
But,
I wonder, honestly, because I'm a woman, so I don't know on the men's side, but what, and this is me just like looking out, but I mean, I think the suffering is the same on both sides. I think, I think, I was just thinking about that the other day. If I walk outside in the street and there's a man, I'll always take a step away, right? Because my job is to protect myself, and I'm weaker than most men, like by far, and that's never a chance I'm gonna take. And just thinking about that, you're like, okay, well, I'm a man, and every time I walk in the street, I see people stepping away from me. Like, I just feel like there's a whole different type of burden that goes there, right? So, like, I just think that there's, I really think that it's like different but same, and I think that's what life is that journey, because I can see how much easier it might be for women to like find a community than maybe it is for men sometimes. And I might be completely wrong here, but I'm just trying to think from my experience
in that way.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Because I always feel like, quote unquote, like women are a little bit more safe, even though sometimes they're not at all. It's just a different, but I have a less chance, to get physically hurt in some ways. Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting that, that you even, because that, doesn't even cross my mind, right? When I'm walking down the street, I don't even, I mean, maybe if I'm, so it's interesting that that's even just part of like your daily.
Yeah, you don't think that you have to walk home before the sun comes down, because I do.
Yeah, right.
Like, we're animals. Like, literally, that's how my brain goes. Like, right, sun's up, sun's down. Like, things are starting to happen. You don't want to stay in the after hour, or you better know exactly where you are in the after hour. You better have, a plan. And when we live in San Diego, which, it's definitely trickier at night, I would kind of know where, like, the guards of clubs would be and things like that, in case, I had to take up sprinting or, that was always like, I always had a plan in my head.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I stopped drinking at 21, because why would I put myself at, for me, it was like, I just don't want to be at risk.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Well, I was going to say, like, all super interesting stuff. And then I guess I'll take this transition point, like, get back to hormones.
Yeah.
So how to do hormones, what, the nitty gritty on that. And I would say that there's lots of different ways to do them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one right way. And in general, I think there's a couple different ways to think about this. One is, what's available. Another is what's convenient. And I don't want to say just convenient, because the reality is what's going to be, from a convenience point of view, like easily applicable and repeatable, and something that you can integrate in your life on a daily basis without it being, a big issue.
The whole thing.
And then you have what can you get access to, right? So from a safety perspective, in general, I think what I think most doctors, regardless of how they've trained, agree that progesterone is safe and can be done orally and can be very easily gotten from a regular, any sort of commercial pharmacy in a way that, estrogen it isn't necessarily acceptable in that way for most women. So micronized progesterone orally is generally a pretty safe bet for most women.
Yeah.
If they need
it.
And that's a whole nother conversation, is deciding what and how. Estrogen, but just to stay on topic and to answer your original question, estrogen is a little bit more complicated, just because when taken orally, the way any drug or any medication gets, sort of integrated into the body is goes orally, gets digested, gets absorbed and taken to the liver. And so estrogen, when it follows that path and goes straight to the liver ends up metabolizing and triggering, processes that it might not otherwise be triggering if it didn't have that regular sort of input of estrogen in that fashion. So estrogen generally is safer, and you can avoid a lot of sort of the risks of like blood clotting and cancer that scared a lot of people decades ago, if it's done a different way. If you allow the body to absorb it and process it in a way that doesn't force it to go straight from the GI tract to the liver, but absorb into the body systemically so that it can get into the bloodstream, the organs have access to it, and then eventually it will get to the liver in little bits as opposed to massive boluses. That is a healthier, safer way generally to have estrogen therapy. And so that there's many different ways that could be done topically, that could be done as a pellet, that could be done intravaginally or mucosally. It could be done as like a ultra fast dissolving sublingual tablet, or troche is another sort of term for that sort of way of administering it, where it goes under the tongue and it absorbs into the bloodstream directly from the oral cavity, so that the tissues get access to it and that the liver gets it little by little as it circulates through. So in general, that really is the safest way for women to get estrogen. That said, I have some women who I prescribe oral estrogen for. And again, going back to the longer I practice, the less dogmatic I get. There are scenarios where oral estrogen might be the right way or the best way to go, because it comes down to those other two things. Like, well, what can you get access to from the providers you have access to? And then what can you really integrate in a way that's sustainable for you? So again, I'm speaking broad strokes. Testosterone works similarly in the way your body processes it. It seems to be better if your body can get access to it without it going, oral, hepatic, circulate. So GI tract to liver, that creates a bunch of issues that you can avoid if it's done So for women, usually it's topical. It could be done as an injection. It could be done as a pellet. But generally speaking, progesterone is pretty easy to do orally safely. Estrogen and testosterone, my preference is to go a non-oral route first. And in most women, that tends to be topical or mucosal, so intravaginal or oral mucosal administration. Although injection and oral is also can be done. But what most women think about and the fears that they have around clots and cancer can be avoided in the most part if dosing and monitoring can be done properly, and administration is done in a way that works for your system. And so that brings me to the next point. So that's sort of, I hope concrete enough to give you and your listeners like my sort of philosophy. And I think in general, that's not niche sort of like anybody who's been well trained in how to do what a lot of people will call like bioidentical hormone therapy, or what I would consider just appropriate hormone therapy for women. Which
Ashley, how's it going?
Yeah, no, I think it's super helpful. I think it's super helpful because I'll have clients that tells me they're doing this and that. then I think this, just listening to this, that would give them a little information on maybe like what are those one or two questions that I would want to ask my doctor, right? So as an example, if my doctor prescribed estrogen and is trying to give it to me orally, like now you have some
Yeah.
little nuggets in your head that you
Yeah.
can be, well, why wouldn't we do it a different route? And at
Yeah.
least like that you have different option. And so this is exactly what I want people to have,
Perfect.
because a lot of like for example, my girlfriend here, she just got prescribed stuff, right? And she she literally is so excited because she's starting testosterone and she needed it. And I was like, oh, awesome, like, because I'm me, so I want to know, okay, which kind she's having, like how
Yeah.
much she's taking, because I'm like, you're my friend. I'm also want to monitor you because I'm doing her nutrition and training and all that. And she was like, well, they gave it to me orally, and I was like, oh,
No.
I was like, okay, well, no problem, because now
Yeah.
let's go, like, why,
Yeah.
because maybe your doctor has the reason why.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then I was asking her all the question, and she she just got so upset because she was like, well, I kind of wish I knew all those questions before. And then, then Dr. Bus comes in my head. I'm like, oh, I need to talk to Dr. Bus so we can kind of like hopefully map out just some question for people, that they can just go ahead, because I get it. It's so hard when I did my IVF stuff. It's so much, and you go in and literally I went through the process and then I got done and I got so mad. I just got so mad. I was like, well, why would they give me, like, so for me, they were giving me so much progesterone. I was having panic attack, and I was like, my stress is so high from this medication. Like, how am I supposed to get pregnant? And then I just got so mad, right? Because I didn't have the question and I didn't have the knowledge or a path or a road. So I kind of wish I had just a couple nuggets of like
Yeah.
reference,
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
And I like how you're
great.
phrasing it, because like I said, I have some women who I prescribe, oral hormones to.
Mhm.
And again, it's not, it's not sort of like the standard package that if, the way doctors are educated in hormone therapy now, unfortunately, it's not really happening in the traditional training.
Mm,
Like, and maybe that's starting to change because like organizations like, you know, um, or maybe not organization, but like the Women's Health Initiative, which is a long-term sort of government-backed research project, which is where that original data misinterpretation happened. But that database, as far as I'm aware, is still open and women are still being followed. And so groups that are involved in looking at that data and publishing it have come out and said, like, man, we were wrong about what we told you to. We told you to not do hormone therapy, and we've been telling you for decades to not, like, we're wrong. And they've come out and reversed those positions.
wow.
So there might be a shift in the residency, OBGYN, would be the specialty in general that, I would hope this would
Mhm.
really sort of, this training would really come back to, because most women have a relation, it's with an OBGYN who they
Yeah.
trust. Many have delivered babies they, tend to stay with for a long period of time, although even that shifts in the current healthcare environment. But that would ideally be sort of the go-to person to help
Mhm.
these hormones, because in an ideal world, you would have data on hormone levels going back years, right? Like, we don't tend to check testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, like the whole, and that's
Yeah.
three of like, at least a half dozen and maybe, 10 or 12 different hormone levels, where it would be fantastic to have a snapshot, teens, 20s, 30s, 40s,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
now, okay, now we're trying to, and at different points in the cycle. And that's just not what we do. Like, those levels aren't being drawn on women or men.
No, like
Uh,
those conversations I think are so important because I look at myself and we've been struggling to get pregnant, and you know, it's like no one until now was talking about it, but as a professional athlete driving my body to the ground, like I really would have loved to see, my eggs quality
Yeah.
and like everything that go how many I had and what does it look like at 20, at 24,
Yeah.
28, am I going in the right direction, in the wrong direction? And
Right.
even then, like, just knowing that there's a different way to eat to at least help that. And yeah, because I think people, the like, now we're finally talking about it, which is good, right?
Good.
And I
Yeah.
I really do think that most doctors are very well aware of this now, which is fantastic. um but we're still kind of like, now when the wheels are falling off, we're looking at it,
Yeah.
because now I don't know what else to do when nothing's working and I'm, desperate. And now we start looking, but and I personally feel like any time is the right time to look,
Yeah.
because then you have some sort of something to follow.
At least some sort of baseline. And then what I would say, even that,
where are you
particularly
from?
women,
What do you do?
even that,
What's your history? And what led you here?
Yeah.
And so, this
Where in
circles
Florida?
back to what, oh my.
Okay, we're
No, Dave just started a call and he's so loud.
Oh, okay. It's all right. It's all right, Dave. We love you, man.
I'm not trying to turn my
Um,
computer.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
Sorry. So, but this gets back to where we originally started, which is, medicine, we get focused on the data
Hmm.
and women's hormones. And I think part of the reason why there's trouble adopting with female hormone therapy, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, premenopausal, whatever it is, you have to look at numbers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yet you have
Were there twins in there?
how the woman's
Okay.
feeling and how they're doing in
Yeah.
physically, metabolically, and there's no, like for men, testosterone, it's pretty simple,
Yeah.
right? Like, 600 to 1200 totals, like free levels. We watch the estrogen. Like there are a few things that can happen, but I would argue you should never cookbook testosterone, or hormone therapy in general, but it can be close to cookbooked,
Yeah.
right? For men, because it's just
I
relatively
totally
simple.
understand.
For women, you could have the numbers in the right
That's
place
great.
on the
Well,
left.
I think you're going to pair up really well with Camille. She
Yes.
And you have to
with the
go
ladies,
with how they
especially
feel, not with what
with regard
is
to
on the
female
laboratory.
hormones,
And that's
how
hard
they
for a lot of
evolve
doctors to
throughout
do.
the course of their
Yeah.
life.
I mean, because a woman could have zero testosterone, but have a great libido and she can put muscle on and she feels great. Well, don't touch it.
Yeah,
You
leave
know,
it alone.
don't touch
Leave it
it.
alone. I agree
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And so, and if you do, like, you're going to learn, man, I shouldn't have
Okay.
stirred the pot
Awesome.
where
Yeah,
it didn't need to be,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so this is what's hard. Also because a lot of doctors rely on a symptom to, so like hot flashes, right? Like hot flashes in general.
Exactly. But luckily,
are
she's got all the
associated
hacks
medically
and can
with
even,
low,
help
like
you
that's
with
a signal that the
understanding
body
where
wants
you're
to
at and,
shoot. So it
and
means
how to get
generally
to
the
where
estrogen
you wanna be.
levels are too
Tell
low
me,
in
what is your
general, right?
training
Because
background? Did you do anything
progesterone,
before? Like, what have you been
even
into in
though
the
it's not
past?
typically associated with hot flashes,
Okay.
the hot flash could actually be a craving.
Excellent. So you're probably familiar with like a lot of the
Yeah. I mean, progesterone does raise your metabolism.
It's
So
different in every woman. And so there are things you can generalize, and that sort of sets you on a trajectory. But then if you're like seeing somebody in a hot flash, can't
those
sleep,
movements are really
I'm
fun.
burning up in
They're
the middle of the
they're
day,
super
I can't
effective.
focus.
But the way we do
And
them
you're like,
is
oh,
just
you
a
need
little bit
estrogen, you
different,
give them
where
some estrogen,
you're
and
usually
they call
going
you
a little
and
bit slower, maybe for
I want to
some
know in
higher
3 days.
repetition.
This you're not.
Yes, it's a lot
This isn't
friendlier.
2 months or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
yeah.
In 2 or 3 days. Is this the right move or the wrong? Like, are we getting better?
Yeah, I
or
know.
not?
And it's tough
If you're
because
not bugging me, I want to know.
Exactly.
Because
It's so
it
fun,
could be
you
the
know, the
wrong thing.
community and the energy in those.
Yeah,
You know what
that's
I
so
mean?
helpful.
It's like, it sounds like estrogen's low. It looks like your estrogen's low. I'm giving you estrogen. I want to know how you feel in 3 days.
Yeah.
Because text me,
So, yeah,
call me, shoot me an email. Because if you're like, oh my God, I'm starting to sleep and these hot flashes are starting to subside, like, awesome, you're on the right track. It's like,
What type
my
of
gosh,
gym do
no,
you
this is
train at? Do you
terrible.
have
Like,
some-
Yeah.
it's like, okay, all right, stop. Let's go another direction. And so
Yeah.
that's hard for doctors
Awesome.
to do.
That's great.
Mm.
And do
system is
you
not
train with
set
your
up
husband at all?
to allow the
Okay, so I'm gonna make a recommendation right off the bat.
Yeah.
appropriate.
I was gonna say it's more than just, it's more for the doctor. It's like you just can't even have access to a doctor 3 days from your prescription. And they are like, in over their head trying to just help as many
Keep up.
people as they can. And thank you to all of them. I can't even imagine like the load.
It's yeah.
It's
I appreciate that because I mean I ultimately I left traditional medicine. I mean that was one of the big factors.
And that's just for the sake of recovery between your sessions.
And the way that
But also giving you the time so that you can actually train those body parts really
not
hard.
have
So I think
Yeah.
Mondays are usually
But
legs,
a lot of doctors feel
Tuesdays,
trapped.
shoulders.
Yeah,
and
yes, I'm sure. I'm sure they're a healer, and there's people that needs healing, and there's like it's like a line that doesn't stop,
yeah.
and it's like
Well, but
yeah,
this is a mentality shift that we as a society are making. And I think you and I are at the tip of that spear, which is you don't, the healthcare system, this is a point that's been made again. But when the wheels are coming off,
meals throughout the day.
yes, we're good at
your
that.
training.
Like, we're fantastic.
And you can find a lot of that
You know,
information
you,
in the app. If you go
have a
to
broken
the
bone,
resources
suffering
section at
from
the bottom,
overwhelming
you'll see
section,
the
like,
targeted nutrient.
you're having a heart attack,
template,
you're
you'll
having a
see the
stroke.
shred guide that kind
When
of
things are
explains the
terrible,
ins and outs, as well as
that's what our healthcare system is.
the directives guide.
Yeah.
that tells
You're
you
doing
how to check
okay,
in and what to expect.
and
Have you seen that stuff?
you're not ideal. Like the healthcare system doesn't.
Okay.
We're not trained. We don't know how to think as physicians and providers. We're generally trained how to deal with that. And so
yes.
you have to leave the system. And so and I think that's happening. More and more people
I think so too.
paying out of pocket for like nutrition help. Like
Yeah.
the doctor doesn't know. They don't know anything about nutrition. They don't.
Yeah.
Like the vast majority of doctors, 99%, they don't know anything about it.
You see a couple.
I agree. Yeah.
And so, people are willing, they understand that, man, for this, I
Any
need
kind of special
to pay out of
training
pocket. But
consideration,
you
you
know
might
what,
add
I would
in
argue
a
that
different program
we
if you
waste
do,
so
but I
much
think
money
that
in
beach-based program
society
is going to fit you really well.
on
At the bottom, there's a little tab
It's
that
really
says resources. Click on that.
and we should
Yeah.
be spending way less
Okay.
time on
And
it.
then in there, you'll see
And the
something
analogy
where
I use is,
it has
the body is a building, is the
ebooks
analogy.
and PDFs in
Right? Like
there.
if the flames are
For you.
leaping
So
out
there
of
you
the
should see under
nose,
ebooks, there should
and
be a
the
shred
flames
guide.
consumed
You see
by
that there? You
flames,
kind of scroll.
like,
Okay,
that's
perfect.
what
So
their
that's
system
like the full
is good at
guide
doing.
program, everything you need to
But if
expect.
the building from the
Underneath that,
outside
it says
looks okay,
nutrition. You'll see
and there's
training for
members in
fat
the
loss
basement,
guide, the meal plan book.
that's sort of
And then there's also a number of
smoke alarms are
videos that
starting
you're
to
going to
go off.
receive, but you'll receive
Or
them
like the medical
kind of
system is
incrementally
their
throughout
field.
the challenge.
Yeah.
The important
Yeah, you
thing to
gotta
know
get-
about, like,
You have to
Yeah.
go outside the
is
system.
that, and I believe
Somebody
Yeah.
like
this
me,
Friday,
somebody like
you're
you.
going to see
And this is where people get
fill out your
confused
initial
because they don't know
assessment.
who to trust.
And
They don't know where to turn.
Yes.
And
I mean, to go to someone like me, unless I feel like, well, I'm me, and I don't know. I think I've been around for a long time, so I think hopefully I've built more trust with people. But there's a lot of people out there that are just really good at marketing, and that doesn't mean that they know what they're doing, or at least, yes. So yeah, there's a whole system there, right?
Right.
Like the same way there's a whole system with everything, because some people have nutrition business and their job is to have as many coach as possible, because that's kind of their revenue, is to get
Yeah.
coach and then have the coach pay them, and then they become this like corporation, and then they try to have everyone make money. but that's not the client, right? That's not the client-based approach. That's like a different type of recruitment. And then you have, people like me and Dave, that our focus is on the clients. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. They're different. They both bring great things, but yeah, there's just a lot. It's a lot. Which is fine. We do a good job in that stuff. I'm okay with it. But I just see how it's hard for people to find the right way, especially also I think people, including myself before I became this, like where I am now in my life, and you have a question, it's doctor, like health question across the board. Well, you have to be a doctor to know. And it's like, well, most doctors don't really have like course on training and nutrition. They like get specialized in their things. And yeah. And thank you for it, because that's exactly where I need you.
Yeah, I think it's and then I guess the only solution, if you're out there and you're feeling stuck, like where do I go, goes back to the exact same thing we were talking about earlier, right? Like there's data. It's good to have that data. So like their credentials, you can look at somebody's credentials, but then you have to then
I'll give you a
pair that with
so if you're doing the morning, what
Yeah.
I'll do
whether it's our primary
is I would take
our OBGYN or surgeon, your orthopedist, God forbid you need surgery, right?
System to fuel you for the lifting.
You do an evaluation
Doing something
credentials,
where I know they
and then you go meet them, and they might have all the credentials, totally not
fill
any of the other qualities, right? And maybe
that would be great.
So
Because
finding
that's
the
gonna
right
break
thing
down
for
fast
you,
and get into your system, so you
like
don't
trust
get
your
too
gut.
tired.
Yes.
Get a good sense.
And then
Yes. Absolutely.
So I think, if you're feeling frustrated out there and not knowing where to go, like trust yourself.
That's what I'm really trying to like bring the carbohydrates down.
You're smart.
So maybe you're just doing
Made it through life this far.
Vegetables.
You have a lot of tools,
Your cardio
and trust in
you could just go on
your own
a
knowledge
10-minute walk after 2 of your meals and just get a little bit of that way. So that would be one.
Yeah.
Not to overcomplicate it,
If
but
it's
I get it hard.
afternoon,
It's nice
that's
to
great.
have like
Afternoon is going to work really easy.
certified, like they couldn't
You'll keep your carbohydrates really like the first half of the day. So you might get up,
might not be able to find
some,
that
let's say,
space
branched chain
around.
amino acids and do your fasted carbs.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Dr. Voss. We're gonna do more of these, and we'll get even more in the weeds.
Awesome. Did we cover
As we
what you
go.
wanted for hormones, or did I wax full size?
We covered stuff. I'm not in charge here. Like the timing of the world is in charge. So whatever we go into, a good conversation is a good conversation. And I think whatever people want to know about, like, please send us in the comment, and we'll just make sure we cover that next time. But that was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Camille.